What's up, guys? It's the champ, Sean O'Malley, here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. You can combine players from multiple sports: football, basketball, MMA, soccer, you name it. We got it. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger Pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details.
Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson coming at you on a fine Friday, which, of course, if you're tuning into this, you might see us. If you're hearing us, it might be a little bit different. But how's things going, Ross? How are you?
Good, man. Good. Glad to be here with you, as always. How you holding up?
Doing good, man. Just ready for the travel day on Saturday to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be an interesting one, right? I mean, this is kind of crazy that you're looking at this game, and it's an important one, NFC South game, week 4. Season's not won or lost here, right? But after last week's, I won't say debacle, but everything that happened last week against Philly, this is a chance to put a win in the column before you go play Kansas City. And the Saints are going to have a tough time, right? Like, the injury report is not good. And we got even worse news on Friday afternoon. Let's just start there. It's kind of crazy how these injuries are piling up, but 2 key players are definitely ruled out of action for Sunday.
Yeah. The New Orleans Saints won't have starting linebacker Demario Davis, nor will they have starting right guard Cesar Ruiz, which compounds the issue with Eric McCoy, the starting center, also going to injured reserve, who won't be able to go. So that's going to be big for the New Orleans Saints to try to overcome. Several players are questionable. The Saints effectively had an injury at 3 different wide receivers, one each day of practice. A.T. Perry hurt his hamstring on Wednesday. Cedric Wilson Jr. hurt his ankle on Thursday. And then Chris Olave hurt a hamstring on Friday. So lots of soft tissue injuries, lots of issues for this New Orleans Saints team. John, before the season began, one of the things that you and I said that this team would have to do, which it hasn't proven to do for the past few years, is stay healthy. And so far, not so good for the New Orleans Saints as they look to start up and try to be competitive in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, injuries in practice. I think that's what's concerning to me, right? Like, this is 3 injuries that happened in practice. Like, I guess the Ruiz one happened during the game. The Davis one, we understand that. Like, I get those types of injuries, and some of them you just can't prevent some of this stuff. But when it's soft tissue injuries, practice, and all these other things, like, I mean, we were out there observing practice on Friday. We don't get to see the whole practice, but like, they're not in pads or anything like that. It's just kind of crazy how this is all unfolded. And now you're looking at a situation where, A.T. Perry's been ruled out. You got Cedric Wilson Jr., who's questionable and with his ankle injury, and then Chris Olave is questionable with the hamstring, and he's considered day-to-day, quote unquote. But that gives them 3 healthy receivers on the roster. Be Rashid Shaheed and rookies Mason Tipton and Bub Means. And so they're going to call up somebody from the practice squad. I mean, you can probably bet your bottom dollar on it. It would most likely 99.99999% be Equinemius St. Brown, who they bring up in the
agreed.
practice squad. But you're having to use a practice squad spot for that, and probably having to look at the offensive line, which we'll get into in a second. But whether they have Olave or not, how does that? I mean, when you got rookies in the game, and then a veteran like St. Brown probably going in, how in the world does this change up the game plan when you're a team that struggled to run the ball last year?
Yeah, I think it makes it all the more imperative to get your run game back going. To where if you can't run the football, you lose this game. If you're the New Orleans Saints, like you just don't have right now the health, you don't have the talent at the moment to be able to produce in that area of the game, unless your tight ends are able to actually go out there and run routes, as opposed to sit back and help with your pass protection, which was a bit of an issue for New Orleans last week. They couldn't get the tight ends involved because they had to stay in for pass protection. It was the same thing that wiped the tight ends off the board last year for the team because of all the injuries on the offensive line. So I think it's not just a compound of A.T. Perry, Cedric Wilson, and Chris Olave being injured. I think it compounds with the fact that you don't have your starting center, you don't have your starting right guard. You're very likely going to have a guy taking snaps at center for the very first time in his career as your starting center in this game. None of that equates to good news for your passing game. So I hope your run game gets going, because that kind of feels like the one and only saving grace left for the New Orleans Saints against this team. And look, against the Falcons, who have been I think they're the 25th rushing defense in the NFL. Good opportunity to run there, but Philly wasn't a very good run defense until you met them last week too. So the offensive line has got to be able to stand up and produce here.
Yeah, you're getting Taysom Hill back in the mix. He's got a chest injury,
Definitely
but
helps.
he's not carrying a game designation going into this one, or injury designation. And so that's going to help. Alvin Kamara is going to play through his rib and hip injury, if you will. And so that's something. But look, again, you look at this. Yes, it is going to be a big run game. And look, with Kamara getting as many carries as he did last week, like, you got to get more people involved, right? I mean,
yeah, for sure.
You can't just lean on 41. And so I'd expect to see a little bit more Jamal Williams, but definitely a Taysom type thing. But you brought up the tight ends, like Juwan Johnson's been on a pitch count. Foster's been getting the bulk of the reps. Hopefully start seeing a little bit more Dallin Holker actually in the lineup, but it's struggle bus a little bit. And then you talked about the offensive line. Now it's the plan. What looks like to me, and kind of from my understanding, is that you got Fuaga and Penning on the outside. Obviously, Lucas Patrick's going to stay at left guard. Shane Lemieux is supposed to be center, and I believe they're going to put Landon Young at right guard. I think that's the plan as of right now. And of course, things could change, but then you're having Saldiveri be a reserve. You're having Oli Udoh being a reserve, and so this is just how they're going to have to deal with it. And they've talked about dealing with adversity ever since they lost last week. And boy, let me tell you, they got some adversity on the offensive line. And I think if I'm the Falcons, I'm smelling the blood in the water. I'm sensing the blood in the water, and they're probably going to bring a good bit to the table if I'm Raheem Morris. And, you say running the football, but like, what does a successful day look like for New Orleans? Because I know people are going to say, oh, well, they're injured. And no, most people aren't expecting anything out of them now, but they're going to be competitive. I think that they, obviously you're going to have the deck stacked against them, but what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but you still got to go out there and you got to play, right? And the idea in terms of you building out your depth and building out your backups and all this stuff is that you have guys that can come in and run the same system that you would run with your starters. It's not going to be as smooth. It probably won't be as effective, but there's no reason to really run around trying to change a bunch of things. Enough has changed for you. Don't change your system and your approach to compound, again, I'll use that phrase again, the issue of all that you're already missing. There's enough that has been changed. There's enough that is an unknown for you at the moment. Don't make it worse by trying to be a team that is different than that which you prepared to be. That's the point of having backups with you all throughout training camp. This is why teams rush to bring back their own players to the practice squad that they cut off the 90-man roster, because you don't want to restart from zero or anything like that with anybody, right? So you bring in and you keep all these guys that you installed your offense and defense with, so you don't have to pivot and change things. And then the other piece is be ready to adjust. There's going to be things that typically work smoother with your starting lineup that aren't going to work as smoothly with your kind of I mean, forgive
normal
the
operation.
phrase,
Yeah.
but yeah. You know, I mean, your abnormal operation in this situation isn't going to be as smooth. And so you got to be ready to pivot to what's going to be best for these players and what's going to work for them. But for the most part, like, just don't complicate the issue by trying to overcomplicate the scheme to make up for what you've lost. If you're invested in these players and if they're on your roster, these are players that you have deemed ready to run your system. So go out there and run your system. And I think that has to be the measure of a successful day for New Orleans, and that hopefully the loss of Demario Davis over on the defensive side doesn't carry so much of a drop off that the defense can't keep the team in it. I think this one's going to be very much about how the Saints perform on the defensive side of the football, especially if Chris Olave isn't able to go. Is that sort of the same way that you see it as well, or do you look at it differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's you got to find a way, right? I mean, you've talked a lot, and we've talked plenty about this team. Nobody cares, Ross. It's okay. It's okay. You can talk as much as you want on this show. Nobody's going to control you on that aspect or cut you off. But look, again, we got the vibe that this locker room has a different vibe, right? It just feels different, and again, they're going to be put to the test. I mean, you have to have a stellar defense, and of course, the one player on offense that you couldn't afford to lose. Now you got the one player on defense you really can't afford to lose. And look, I mean, caught up with Demario on Friday after practice, and look, he feels good, and he sounded like he still was going to try to play, but obviously he's been ruled out, so I don't think that's actually a possibility. But save him, let him come back for Kansas City. I think DeMarco Jackson's obviously going to be a little bit more in line for that particular role with Willie Gay Jr. and Pete Werner. So that's probably what you're looking at. And look, DeMarco Jackson, this is what we saw in training camp. So he got a lot of reps when DeMario's injury happened in training camp. So it's not really a surprise there. And look, we've praised a lot about Michael Hodges, and now it's on Willie Gay Jr. to really show people now. It's on, DeMarco Jackson. It's a lot of pressure on those guys. But for me, it's about starting with that pass rush and getting after Kirk Cousins, because the Falcons have some injuries too. If they can get to Kirk Cousins and disrupt him a bit while they are able to control the run, they still can be in this game similar to what they were against Philly. Like, even with the offensive struggles, I think they can still do that as long as they control the line of scrimmage. It's going to be a little bit harder, obviously, with no DeMario, but I feel like if they can do that, you should get Colin Saunders back this week. And so I think that's going to help against the run, but it's just about, and you look at the Saquon Barkley run. I mean, we talked to Joe Woods on Thursday. It was a missed assignment, right? Like, those things can be cleaned up pretty easily. And so, I think it's going to lie heavily on his defense. And look, this is a position that they kind of like to be in, is put it on the defense. Let's give it something. And I feel better about this offense, even as hobbled as it is, trying to put up points on the board versus the offenses that we've seen in the past.
Listen, if we were talking about last year's offense with no Eric McCoy, no Cesar Ruiz, the potential for no Chris Olave, no A.T. Perry, the potential for no Cedric Wilson Jr., like, if we were talking about last year's offense there, we'd all be saying, all right, well, pack it up. We'll see you in Kansas City. You know what I mean? Like, it would be very simple. But I think you're right. I mean, this is the situation that they're in, and this is sort of the intrigue of something new for New Orleans. We haven't seen the Saints in this current iteration of their existence within the offense have to navigate injury. Maybe they're better at it than the previous years were. We just don't know yet how much the system or scheme can make up for this kind of stuff. But we're going to get to know. The thing that makes it very challenging is that if you look at these wide zone offenses across the NFL, and you look at San Francisco's win-loss record with and without starting left tackle Trent Williams, not great. You look at Miami and their starting offense without starting right tackle Austin Jackson, win-loss without, not great. Same thing for Philly and Lane Johnson, not great, so on and so forth. Is this going to be the case with the New Orleans Saints and Eric McCoy, right? And so you have to find a way, unlike maybe some of these other wide zone systems out there that haven't been able to necessarily find a way. You've got to find a way to win without your best offensive lineman. And so this is a big moment for Clint Kubiak to go out there and prove, hey, I have something here that you can win with your best players, without your best players, or at least be competitive without your best players. I think this is an important game for New Orleans. I'm not going to call it a must win, but it sure is a would love to win kind of game going up against a division opponent. And a division opponent you're probably going to be close to record-wise by the time of the season's said and done.
Yeah, and I mean, you said Clint Kubiak, but I also think this is a big game for Dennis Allen. Like, if he comes
For sure.
away and he's able to get a win out of this game, like, this is okay. I know some people have kind of like, you're on the fence with Dennis Allen. I get that, but if he wins a game like this with all the decks stacked against him and they get it done, then you really don't have too much else to talk about. Now, again, a lot of things can happen. It is that type of game, and it's early in the season. I guess that's the only silver lining, because McCoy's 6 to 8 weeks roughly is kind of what it is. And I think when I was talking about it the other day, I think December 1st is probably that game that I would think that he would come back. It's against the Rams at home, because they have a bye week.
The bye week.
Yeah. It's there's no need in rushing him back for that game before if he's not ready. But look, everybody's different. Everybody that is different in the way it heals and such. So it's going to be fun, but it might get ugly quick, but we just don't know. I guess my thing to you is, you've talked a lot about, you've talked to Bub Means a good bit, right? And I think he's somebody that's going to be thrust in the spotlight. Him and Mason Tipton. Tipton's more in the run kind of looks and stuff, but obviously he's caught a couple of passes. What can you tell us maybe about Bub Means, that his mindset, because he hadn't been involved too much early on, but this feels like a game where these two rookies are going to have to step up and be in a position to make some catches and do some things on the field.
Yeah, one of the big things that you learn about Bub Means the second that you talk to him is how ready he is to contribute. And that is a big piece to who Bub Means is. He's not a guy that cares if he gets 10 catches, if he gets 1 catch, if he gets 10 targets, if he gets 0 targets. All he cares about is going out there and doing what it takes to help the team win. The wide receivers, the Saints do something interesting. They do a full offense meeting with their coaching staff, to where Clint Kubiak addresses the entire offense, and then they break out into their position rooms. You'd be surprised. That sounds logical, but it's actually quite unique as around the NFL. And so when they're doing that, one of the big things in that big sort of meeting is that they really call out a lot of like good blocking by wide receivers on the perimeter and things like that. And Bub Means is somebody that takes that to heart. Like, he wants to be recognized in that situation. So I think that gets him out on the field quite a bit in terms of his ability to be able to help out when it comes to the passing game and the run game. But for him, the thing that he always sort of talks about is being ready at any wide receiver position, whether that's the weak side guy as the X, the strong side guy off the line of scrimmage as the flanker, or the Z, the slot guy, whatever it is. He feels ready to contribute from all three of those levels. And for him, the way that he looks at it is that it's his obligation to be ready for any of those 3 spots. And so this could be the game where he plays quite a bit more than he's played so far, and probably gets run at each of those different positions, and gets to maybe do a little bit more than he was asked to do during his time at Pitt as the leading receiver there last year. So could be an interesting game for him, and he could be a guy that ends up making a pretty major contribution, because it seems you're going to need somebody outside of Rashid Shaheed, especially if Chris Olave is not able to go.
At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care, is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details. At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care, is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details.
What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Season-long fantasy can take so much time, but on Prize Picks, I can pick a new lineup every day. The app is really simple to use. To create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Combine your favorite players from football to basketball to hockey to WNBA. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy app with injury insurance. If your player goes down in the first half, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Just download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't have a ton of film to really go off of when it comes above me as Mason Tipton. But, look, the Falcons have a very talented group back there, and Jesse Bates and obviously Justin Simmons. And so, I mean, it's something that, it depends. I don't know if there's going to be a deep shot game or if something like where you're going to try to work the middle of the field more or you're trying to work the outside, but that remains to be seen. But, I think Means is in for a little bit more rep work at least on the field, and so we'll see how that kind of plays out. And you were talking about the offensive line or offensive group meeting together. That doesn't really surprise me much, and it shouldn't surprise many other people. Why is because the fact that we've talked about all the time that this offense, no matter what coach, whatever player, says it's one voice, and so you only get to one voice when it's one in the meeting and stuff. So I kind of think that makes a lot of sense to me. And so look, they're going to have to figure out a way to move the ball. They're going to have to do the things, and whether Kamara plays a lot or little, or he plays hurt. I mean, this is just a time where, injuries, regardless, you see a player out there that just goes out and just puts it all on the line. And that's how Alvin is, and hopefully they can be better than what they were against, obviously, the Philly. But it's going to be tough. Points are going to be hard to come by in some aspects. But in the same breath, I think defensively, how do you stop a Kirk Cousins? Because everybody's kind of been asking, like, this offense is similar, I guess, in some similarities to what New Orleans has. But how do you slow a Kirk Cousins down, and how do you control a Bijan Robinson?
Yeah, I mean, controlling Bijan Robinson, maybe I'll write my thesis on that someday. But when it comes to what you're doing with Kirk Cousins, you're trying to do, it's interesting because, the offenses are similar, but the quarterbacks are very different. I know people don't look at Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr as being too terribly different, but I think Derek Carr is a lot more mobile and athletic than Kirk Cousins is. And especially right now, coming off the ACL tear from last year and things like that, just in all fairness, like some of it is just injury recovery. But when it comes to Kirk Cousins, what you want to do is get pressure on him. Like you mentioned earlier, you want to make him uncomfortable. He's only been moved off of his spot, I think 7 times this season and everything. And so you want to get him moving. You want to get the interior pressure that pushes him towards the outside, all of those things so that you're able to kind of put him in more uncomfortable situations. In the plays where he's been under pressure so far this season, he's completed just over 50% of his passes, thrown 3 interceptions, all 3 of his interceptions so far, and has, I think it's like a 47.9 or 49.7, I can't remember which one, passer rating in those situations as well. So put him in those bad situations, but none of that's going to matter if you don't slow down Bijan Robinson, particularly on 1st and 2nd downs. You need to force them into throwing down so that you can get that pressure on Kirk Cousins and try to be opportunistic over on the defensive side. And then for the Saints on offense, they've got to cash in on the turnovers, because that was a big time, killer for them last week against Philly, was that they got 2 turnovers plus the block punt, 3 turnovers, a couple of turnovers on downs as well, and couldn't really cash in on any of that. So the Saints are going to have to be better at that this week if they can force those turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, the formula that it's going to take to win. And again, if they win this game, buddy, I mean, this is a big one. If they can,
it's a big one if they do
somehow. And not just in the sense it's an NFC South win, but we've talked all along, if they could get to week 5 and come out at least 3-2, this is a good spot to be in. And look, they're going to get healthier, hopefully, and hopefully the bleeding kind of stops on this injury front. But right now it is what it is, and again, you can't make excuses. Nobody's going to feel sorry for them. You still have to go out there and perform. This team is still expected to get a playoff, at least try to get into the playoffs. You know what I mean? But you can't sit and hide behind injuries. You know what I mean? It's just part of the game, because you've talked about the center. We talked about it on the other show about the center position and preparing for that and some other things. So, we're going to find out what this depth is really made of, and if it's enough or not. There might be some more pre-snap penalties. There might be a little bit more holding penalties. Sure. I mean, it's just going to be some stuff that we just have to see. I don't know. How do you see this one playing out? I think that's the biggest mystery and wild card here.
Yeah, let me say two quick things real quick on some things that you mentioned. One of the other things I think you're looking for is, particularly with Shane Lemieux, if he is going to be playing at center, which is what we're both expecting here, that you want clean snaps. He had a couple of errant snaps all throughout the preseason. We saw him throughout training camp. Big concern there during that time. Now with more reps, more practice, more this, that, and the other, how does that end up looking for him, assuming that, he's the guy that's been practicing there. And then the other piece too, and you mentioned that like no one's going to feel sorry for them. Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I went through every single injury report for the Sunday games for this week, and I counted the number of questionable and doubtful players combined, as well as the number of players that are out throughout going into this week. And this is a big time issue right now for the NFL. The Saints have 3 players questionable, 3 players out. But just look at teams like New England, who have 4 questionable / doubtful, 3 out. San Francisco, 5 questionable, doubtful, 2 out. Tampa, 6 questionable, doubtful, 2 out. Cincinnati, 3-2. Chicago, 3-3. So on and so forth. There's a total of 41 players that are either questionable or doubtful this week, and then 38 players that have been ruled out, not including those that are already on injured reserve, with the exception of 1. And then you look at the 2 Monday night games, 12 and 13 players combined on each of those that are either limited as were either limited or did not participate in their Friday practices. They still have a Saturday practice though before they get game designation. So health being an issue across the entire NFL. Now for the Saints, it's the players that they are without: Chris Olave, Eric McCoy, Demario Davis. There's no quantifying that except for big, right, in terms of what those losses are for a team. But it is interesting to see that like this is a league-wide situation right now, to where a lot of players, particularly in the offensive lines, are injured. Okay, quickly to answer your actual question, which was about how the New Orleans Saints. Does that bring anything to mind?
No. Well, no. The only thing I was going to say is this, and they want to go to an 18-game season,
right?
We've talked about this again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, go back to past episodes. I don't know how many months ago we talked about the fact that if they're going to look at doing this, they have to increase the active roster or the active game day roster, or expand something. Like this is basically proven to you right now that if you go to 18-game season and still expect it to be only a 53-man roster, it just does not compute, right? Like I just don't. I get injuries happen, things happen. Like this is the NFL. Not for long, whatever you want to call it, but you got to look at something different, because you talk about player safety, you talk about all this other stuff. Now, like, practice what you preach in some aspects for me, but that's just one of the main things that come to mind, is that you're looking at that, and look, I know the pressure's on a guy like Shane Lemieux. I know the pressure's on a guy like Landon Young. I think that Landon's obviously been around this league long enough to understand and know the situation. I think Shane Lemieux, he's obviously played in a system like this, but not obviously at center. And, maybe there are some snap exchanges that go a little bit errant, but how can he hold up for a full 60 minutes? I think that left side, keeping Lucas Patrick there at left guard and Taliesin Fuanga, is going to be a smart play, especially if you're going to try to run the outside. That's kind of the side I might favor a little bit, or Trevor Penning's outside. But, I think the biggest thing is the pass protection. I'm not worried about the left side necessarily. I think it's that interior and that right side, obviously, if things go to the wayside. But, this is, I want to say Clint Kubiak legacy game, or, anything like that. But, look, this is the game where if you really want to prove a believer or make a believer out of somebody, this is the game.
Yeah, 100%. Especially if they end up being without Chris Olave, and then they wind up winning this game, and the offense produces. Like that's a status builder big time for Clint Kubiak. So definitely something to watch out for. I'll stick with, I tend to not change my predictions regardless of what I'm seeing in season. I stick with usually my preseason stuff. I picked the New Orleans Saints to win this one. I think the one thing that will make me change from that is if Chris Olave can't go and is out. I think the Saints are going to have a really tough time producing on the offensive side. So that would be the one thing that I would add to that, to caveat it. But as of right now, I'll stick with the Saints getting a win on the road, but it is not going to come easy.
Yeah, I agree. I still can't pick against them. Now, next week, regardless of what happens, I think that I'll pick Kansas City. You know what I'm
Same.
saying?
Yeah,
Like,
for
I don't
sure.
want to sit here
For
and
sure.
say, well, New Orleans is going to win every week. I think their friend in this game could be leaning more on the tight ends if they can not be engaged in blocking the whole game. Like, I think Juwan Johnson could be a factor in this game. I think you can get some tight end screens going. I think you can lean on this a little bit more and, work that short to intermediate route and some of the stuff that we saw working in training camp. And, again, it's going to depend on some protection, obviously, and what the Falcons do, and they're going to find out pretty quick. I mean, how the first 15 plays are scripted, all this other stuff, and so they're going to get a game feel of how things go. But I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's more like a 21-17 type game, right? I just don't think there's going to be a lot of points put up on the board. I know it's Atlanta. I know they probably got that salty taste in their mouth from last year's game and all this stuff. And look, Atlanta got them last year in Atlanta. You know what I mean? So it's just everybody knows how this is. We build up the rivalry, talk about it, like all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, I dare say the Saints are a better coached team. You know what I mean? I think Atlanta's still trying to figure out who they are in some aspects and what they have. And, look, I love Raheem Morris. I think he's an outstanding coach and not only just a person or defensive guy, but I think he's a head coach that, like, if I was playing, which I'm not, that'd be a guy I'd want to play for sure. But look, I got to take him. I got to take him this week because they know what's at stake. The adversity's there. They've been talking about it. They didn't get too low on themselves. This is not a situation like that. And they just have a little bit of chip and an edge on their shoulders, right? And I think based off the bad taste that they had in their mouth, I mean, look, they're maybe 2 plays away from winning that game last week, and they would have been 3-1. And then you'd be okay to lose this game in some aspects, like, quote unquote, but I can't pick against them, not this week. I think that they're going to show us a little bit of something. It's not going to be pretty. It's on either side of the ball, but I think Chase Young can help get this pass rush going a little bit. Carl Granderson is going to be a nightmare, right? I still think he's going to be able to have a really good game in this one, but getting after Kirk Cousins, make him uncomfortable. That's going to be their best friend, and get some of the turnovers and capitalizing. I don't think it's a crazy game plan, but can they execute it? That's the main thing.
Yep. With you 100% on that. 100%.
Oh, man. Well, we're going to be going to Atlanta, and everybody that's been affected by the storm, if you're listening, obviously, we want to send our good thoughts and wishes and stuff and to you guys. I know it's hard dealing with that, and it's an area where they're not used to it, right? And I say we're used to it, not really, but that sucks seeing all that. So just want to mention that.
For sure.
While we're here, Ross, what do you have coming up on at Locked On and LouisianaSports.net, which is rocking and rolling?
Yeah, man. So LouisianaSports.net, we got our 5 things to know coming out later on Friday night into Saturday morning. Dylon.
Sorry, I had to use it.
No, I love that. And then I will also have a column up soon taking a look at the New Orleans Saints culture in their locker room on offense and how it translates to their production on offense, because there's a lot of things that they practice and preach on the field that actually start with the way that they practice and preach amongst one another. And I think it's a really cool story. So I'm going to dive into all that a little bit. And then over at Locked On, we'll have another episode Saturday morning breaking down again those 5 things to know for this game. What you got coming up over at Saints on SI?
Yeah, man, it's we're obviously looking at the injuries and stuff, and of course put some nuggets in there about what stuff about the O-line and all that, and linebacker, and then just same thing, fantasy betting, a couple of things here and there that we're looking at, and so trying to work on a couple of features and stuff, and maybe something cool when the Kansas City game rolls around. But I'm keep that a little bit up to my hat, under my hat for now. But yeah, it's rocking and rolling. So if you guys aren't able to tune in or anything, be sure to follow us on social media. We'll be at the games, obviously, and can help you out. And we're always worth a follow, right? I mean, and like and subscribe. Things are just rocking and rolling here, and hopefully they just keep going in this direction. And so look, we want to just tell you that we really appreciate you guys tuning in and all the support that you have. The season's moving around, like it's moving along really fast, and that's good and bad. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of good and bad, but it's a fun thing to do, and we can't do that without you guys and your support. So we really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, notifications, tell everybody around there and about us. And we'll be giving you some more content as we go. And of course, catch our post-game show after it's all said and done. We'll be live regardless of win, lose, or draw. So on behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks for Second and Saints signing out. We will talk at you on Sunday.
Love you.
At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger Pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details. At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger Pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details.